Uh, so first I'll introduce myself. Um, आई एम बादल. हम लोग भगत सिंह छात्र एकता मंच से. भगत सिंह छात्र एकता मंच इज़ अ स्टूडेंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जो दिल्ली में फंक्शन करता है, और हम लोग एक प्रो पीपल प्रो स्टूडेंट डेमोक्रेटिक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है. And today we have invited Professor Anand Teltumbde, a writer, a scholar, a activist, and इनके बारे में ज़्यादा कुछ बोलने मतलब नहीं रखता है, because we all know who he is. And so we had invited Sudha as a part of our first lecture, and this is our second lecture that is by Professor Anand Teltumbde on caste politics and the host of hawks of electoral politics. So I'm gonna put Professor Anand on the stage to speak.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lakshman. Um, when I got an invitation through your mail, it was the topic was given as a role of caste and in electoral politics. And later on, probably it's changed, and the poster I see is something like caste and hoax of electoral politics. Probably electoral politics not is not an hoax. The democracy is a hoax for which electoral politics is deployed. That needs to be clarified first, because the kind of electoral politics that is done in the country in the name of democracy, the democracy itself is a hoax. Now we will uh, see this in this way, that how this democracy is something like a rule of people's opinions should prevail, etc., and whatever that is happening in the country now is known to us before us, to see. So we need to understand how did democracy get operationalized, because electoral politics comes from that context. Democracy per se, there could be two ways of democracies. There is something like a pure democracy and representative democracy. The pure democracy is something which actually the people would make a decision for every important point that our government uh, uh, actually takes up. Every policy, every decision, etc., is decided by the people. Their opinion prevails, and that how that opinion is given is a different thing. Obviously, for a modern nation states, this pure democracy is a bit difficult. Earlier times, the earliest examples and commonly cited example is Athenian democracy, where democracy itself was born. So that was an example of a direct democracy. So the people's assembly actually used to take a decision of every important point, not only governmental decisions, but even how the courts will decide. That also used to be decided by the people in an assembly.
Professor,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to stop you, but
Hmm.
I think can you place your mic towards you, because I'm getting comments that they're not able to hear you.
So what do I do?
Like your earphone का mic आप अपने पास रख सकते हैं थोड़ा सा. That would help.
Okay. It's close to that only, no?
This is much better, yeah.
No, even I was not able to hear you properly. It was cracking, so I don't know what is it
No,
due
no,
to.
we are able to hear you. It's not breaking, but it was थोड़ा सा inaudible because of the distance between your mic, but
Okay.
it's perfect now. I'm really
O-
sorry. Yeah, yeah.
Okay now?
Yeah,
Is it
thank you,
okay?
thank you. Yes, yes,
All right.
Professor, thank
All
you.
right. Yeah. So what I was saying is, uh, looking at the democracy, the way it is operationalized to representative uh, manner, the democracy cannot be implemented in a direct terms. for a bigger nation state, the kind of nation state that evolved. The earlier times when democracy was very in incipient stage, like in Athenian democracy for that matter, where we all know that democracy was born. So that used to be direct democracy. That was a model of democracy, pure democracy rather. So everything was decided by the assembly of people out there. Not only government decisions, but even the decisions by the courts used to be decided by directly people. There were limitations to that kind of democracy because, as you know, women were not allowed, was not a part of the assembly. Then the slaves were not allowed to be there, and also the migrant people also were not part of the assembly. So only about 1,000 male people used to have a frequent assemblies, and they used to decide. Thereafter, they many such models were operative even in American colonies. Also, some city kinds of councils, they operated direct democratic model. But as the states grew, as the population grew and nation states came into being, etc., and people chose democratic model, particularly after European Renaissance, the liberal democratic forms have evolved, and the question came as to how to operationalize these democracies. So the representational form, that means people would choose the representatives, and through them, the democratic decision would be taken. That kind of paradigm came into being, and naturally, the electoral politics uh, also was born. So this is the birth of electoral politics. Now, how is that? Direct democracy, what are the kinds of direct democratic forms that could be operated? We know the participatory democracy, deliberative democracy, and something like semi direct democracy, the democratic form. Participative democracy is something where people would directly participate and vote for the decisions. And deliberative democracy would be something like votes would not be cast as such, but something like they would deliberate on every point that comes up, and the decisions would be taken on basis of those deliberations. And semi-direct democracies, something like through referendums, through initiatives, and through popular recalls. That means some any point a referendum could be made that people could vote for on that, and something like popular initiative, which is this kind of model is operative even today in Switzerland. Many decisions are actually uh, taken by referendum. Many important decisions are taken by a referendum, and from earliest times, Switzerland it actually followed this. In probably 1847, they actually included in their national constitution as a statute referendum. That means all important decisions are to be referred to people, and then people actually give opinion on them. So even if the legislature might have taken certain decision, but people opinion could veto it down, and that cannot be operated. So that kind of models could be an example of pure democracy, direct democracy. But these models have anyway pros and cons. Pros could be in terms of it is a pure democracy, so it is quite people's participation is ensured, and people are involved directly there, so there is no issue of something like that. Then so there's a something like it becomes any decision that government operates it's the legitimized by people themselves. Then there is an accountability directly in people, and the justice. Then and there is a learning value, the people actually keep on learning. There's an educational element associated with that. But cons also are obvious, that it is quite a cumbersome method, Uh, it requires lot of information intensity among the citizenry that people do ought to know the inside out of the issues. Then there it is obviously quite burdensome, and it is something like very hard to administer. As the things started getting complex and people thought that this cannot be uh, implemented. This is from the very operational viewpoint that direct democracy is discounted and representational democratic model started coming in. So we too have, and most democracies rather have, this representation democracy. And from that the electoral politics comes. Now electoral politics, when it actually used for electing people's representative, uh, one need to think that is there only default model that we have. I mean the first past the post kind of model. Is that the only model that we could have for elections? The answer is no. In India, as it evolved, as the uh, devolution of power had taken place during colonial times, and the kind of model came, it was by default the Westminster model, and Westminster model actually follows the first past the post kind of election, FPTP, in short. So what happens is this became a something like a default model, and people also did not question. Even our founding fathers did not question it and have taken it for granted. The entire kind of discourse along this, I mean, the systems, etc., design of systems, etc., that in the Constituent Assembly, we see it takes for granted that this is the only model and only PR's kind of system, the alternate model, proportional representation system, was uttered only twice, and that was something like almost dismissed. So that needs to be seen as a matter of principle. The first part, the post system of election actually discounts something like 49% minimum people. uh, their opinion does not prevail, because it's the majority that actually gets past that thing, and that forms the government, that forms the legislative body, meaning that forms the government, and that actually operates the system. So, so when we call a democracy, basically for just a sec, somebody has come. I will pause. Sorry, there is no one at home. So what I was talking about is when we talk about electoral democracy, we have chosen a first past the post kind of election system, and we when we consider it in the context of democracy, that people would decide here by design something like a 49% minimum is gets excluded, the 51% or something like a 50%, 49% or something that way. So the minority, once it casts a vote and the person gets elected, the rest of the people actually get discounted. And government translate. Today, BJP gets 40 odd percent vote, and Modi can easily talk uh, on behalf of all the people. He says that something like he represents 1.4 billion people. So that is the kind of uh, asymmetry that is inbuilt in this electoral system. So effectively, what happens is that in FPTP kind of system, it is not the people's opinion that matter, but it's the strategy, the management strategy for the electioneering is actually matters. So this is the paradox that gets created in FPTP system, and we live with paradox as many other countries do. So there was a kind of alternative to this kind of system in terms of proportional representation system. Now, just give a brief kind of thing, very simplistic way of talking about proportional representation system is that in, people actually vote for the parties or interest groups, and they decide their representation. Now, there are variants of uh, PR system, and that perhaps is the positive side of it. That because of there are many kinds of variants that can evolve through the PR system, uh, we can customize the PR system for our own requirement. Now, obviously, India, like country, which has caste, communities, various ethnicities, and so many identities in work, for that, the first type of first past the post kind of system could not have been uh, ideal. So there lies the question as to why did our founding fathers chose this system and adopted this, and still it is taken as default by the people and it never questioned. The answer probably is that this is the only system in the given situation could have ensured the perpetuation of a class rule. What happens is that just the, have to have something like a chunk of votes to get past the post, and that's all. That actually gives you a mandate of ruling it. It is as good as you can create an autocracy out of very minimal kinds of votes, uh, and that is possibly could be the point why our people have adopted the system. As I said, that this has come through default Westminster model, but there was a choice also for our people to exercise, but they have not done that, and they have taken this as a something like default system, and probably as I see, that is the reason. Otherwise, if just contrasting it and considering the alternative, which is a PR system could have given you, suppose there are now caste, there are communities, etc., and we um, have something like various kinds of ideologies, like the left communists are there, then there are socialists, there are Hindutva kinds of people, etc. So they have a following, and they can have that kind of representation in proportion to the kinds of number of votes they actually poll. For instance, suppose communists are there in the country today, they do not get probably anybody elected gets elected on a communist party ticket because they have gone out of fashion. So that kind of system is there, that kind of thing is the aftermath. But in PR system, they whatever vote they poll, they could have stake claims to that much share of the seats in the parliament. So is the case with Hindutva people also. So Modi and BJP for that matter, they gets 37 to 40% votes. So their number in the parliament could have been restricted to 37 to 40% votes. That does not happen in the FPTP system, and they just could actually get with that kind of minority votes, they actually rule the roost and can create an autocratic paradigm. So this is the system which has uh, been operating in our country. Now, as far as caste is there, caste uh, comes into picture. Democracy goes by numbers, uh, and the the fault lines in the society, the caste or communities or languages, regions, whatever, those will be naturally used, and that is being getting used. Why caste is so salient in the electoral politics in India, and it is almost a prime mover of electoral politics, I would say, is because of this, that the the basic identity of people here is the caste. It is not something like Hindutva and all that kind of thing. I will come to that, how they have actually created the constituency and created a menace for the country shortly, short, after a short while. But we need to understand how this has actually, the caste politics came into being. To start with, when India became independent, the Congress had almost monopoly, and because of they had an aura of fighters for the freedom, etc. They and they created that kind of thing, and they had almost a monopoly of things. They did not have to bother. What I mean is the electoral politics was not competitive, but in course of time, the that aura faded out after Nehru died. The and the, by that time, so many things had happened. Particularly, as I saw, I give two kinds of major major changes that had come in during the Congress time, which was uh, land reforms and the green revolution. The land reforms were operated, everything is deliberative. It's not an innocuous. Land reforms actually happened in the country, something like in the name of food shortage, and something like the long pending justice which was canvassed during the freedom movement, and with which actually people were lured into freedom movement, that after independence they would get land, etc. There was a widespread hunger for land, and in the name of that the land reforms were operated. But the way the land reforms actually were implemented in India was something like the erstwhile tenant. There was an eye on the middle caste who happened to be the cultivators, the farming caste, so called, and they got the land ownership in the land reforms. Wherever land reforms had taken place, because nobody can say the land was a state subject, and it was imposed, and state had to create their own legislation and operate it variously. So land reform had taken place variously in the country, but something like a very general way, if you want to take a bird's eye view and talk about it, it has been like that, that land reforms actually brought in ownership of the erstwhile tenants who happen to belong to the middle caste, Shudra caste, and these they were indirectly the the Congress actually eyed on this class to be their uh, mainstay, because as such Congress did not have uh, the extension to rural areas, mofussil areas, and wanted an agency created in the rural sector through this caste. And as all of you know that then in the name of food shortage, green revolution was brought in. Green revolution was nothing but the capitalist strategy uh, for the agriculture. Through green revolution, the productivity of land increased, The and the there is something very drastic happened in the term of relationships. The capitalist relations actually pervaded and flooded the rural areas. Something like they were high, the seed market, meaning input market came, output market came, the service market came, money market came, credit market, etc. All these kinds of market got created in the rural areas, and the capitalist relations flooded the countryside. But that does not mean that they displaced the caste relations. The caste or caste relations also were continued by the thing. One thing happened that the erstwhile landlord uh, uh, who belong mainly to the upper caste, mainly Brahmins, most of the places, were displaced. They were displaced to the urban parts of the country. That they eyed something like more opportunities there, and they were happily gone. Their interests were taken care by the new developmental paradigm that is coming in, and the Shudras, the Shudra caste landowners, a section was created. In every village that who got a land, and they uh, uh, assume they took over something like a baton of Brahminism from this uh, Brahminical caste landlords. Now there is a problem. What happens is that the the erstwhile Brahminic caste were had ruled things with centuries, and they were quite uh, sophisticated in sort of operating the system. But this Shudra caste did not have that kind of experience, and the crude kind of operations came in, and the Dalits were the net losers in this game. So we are not talking about the Dalit losing or atrocities being unleashed on Dalits, etc. But what is happening in terms of politics is that initially these people uh, served the Congress. The way the Congress actually formulated the policy, which was aimed at creating the agent in the rural area, that a little bit of, succeeded. But later on, these people actually developed the political aspirations and started challenging the Congress rule. They started hard bargaining out of that. The, re- they also amassed a lot of wealth because the surplus, the untaxed surplus, started flowing into various industries, and they got petty bourgeoisized. The various industries were set up in semi-urban parts or rural areas, like dal mills, rice mills. They got into transport sector, they got into became a contractors to the government, etc. And they started seeing the opportunity in politics, and they developed the kind of political aspirations to that. So by 70s or late 60s, something like the electoral politics started becoming competitive, and then came the importance of the vote banks. Vote banks uh, were naturally conceived in terms of caste, because they were the ready-made kinds of identities that were available in the system. So this is therefrom actually the the role of or salience of caste in electoral politics starts becoming predominant. Now, of course, there is no need of telling you that actually everything is driven in electoral politics by caste. Even something like a communists also have to consider a caste. Lately, where the caste was anathema in the uh, communist framework, that they did not want. That was something like a divisive of a class, etc., and they have not considered it. But lately, even the communist parties have floated something like the caste annihilation trends in many states, and some of the uh, states they have been doing quite good work in that framework, within that framework. But how the framework actually fits in the broader framework is a question mark. So that apart, uh, then there were let me say, there were during even colonial time there were certain changes that were coming in a caste, so that also needs to be understood to understand the today's caste politics. What happened was that the as the capitalism came in through cover of colonialism, the upper caste, through the basic logic, the dominant logic of minimizing transaction cost, got into capitalists, and actually the ritual caste differences between them uh, uh, were started vanishing. So they started something like marital relationship, the relationship, etc., and the ritual caste were mm, um, uh, actually start getting weakened. So through that, there is a block, something like upper caste block, which did not have the ritual caste differences, got formed, and they took something. They adopted the capitalism. Then the middle caste came in, and through this process, as I said just before, also a section was formed, and they got kind of their bogie also got hitched to that upper caste bogie, and there was not much of a difference of ritual caste that was spoken about in them, and they became the same. What was left out is the lower caste in sense the Dalits, and they did not have anything. So the caste politics, they actually started doing the Dalits uh, because they came in cheaper, because they were the resourceless people, and all people started coming in. So you can find out, even the importance of iconization of Ambedkar being the sole icon of Dalits, etc., also started actually coincide with this timeline. So many things actually fall within this framework. I'm not very meaning articulate about explaining to you. I'm aware, but something like if you consider this framework, then many things actually fall in line. Something like an atrocities, the new genre of atrocities that came in, that they also actually started coming in by late 60s, the 68 being the Kelvin Many massacre, and the electoral politics getting competitive around something like in early 70s, that getting manifested into many kinds of civil society movements. All those things actually come in, and along with comes in even the iconization of Ambedkar, and all parties, because Ambedkar becoming something like a uh, uh, hello. Some message came. Is it? Am I not audible?
No no प्रोफेसर, you're audible. It was just about that आप पूरी तरीके से इंग्लिश में बोल रहे थे, तो it's not, थोड़ा सा उनके लिए it was being difficult.
अच्छा अच्छा, ठीक है
Can you
मैं,
mix up थोड़ा थोड़ा?
हाँ ठीक है, मैं मिक्स अप कर दूंगा थोड़ा.
Okay, thank you प्रोफेसर.
या तो मैं हिंदी बोलने की कोशिश करूंगा. हिंदी भी मेरी ठीक नहीं है, इंग्लिश भी ठीक नहीं है. चलो. तो व्हाट हैपेंड वाज द ये जो लैंड रिफॉर्म्स और ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन की पॉलिसीज गवर्नमेंट ने अडॉप्ट की बाय लेट 60s और अर्ली 70s के करीब, काफ़ी चेंजेस यहाँ पे हुए. जो 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 मिडिल कास्ट थी, जो सुधरा कास्ट थी, जिनमें से एक सेक्शन को लैंड ओनरशिप मिली, वो उनका बहुत एनरिचमेंट हुआ, उनके पास सरप्लस आया, जो उन्होंने प्लॉप किया बड़े अपनी छोटी छोटी इंडस्ट्रीज लगाने में, जो राइस मिल, दाल मिल वगैरह देखते हैं, जो ग्रीन रिवॉल्यूशन की एक्चुअली पैदाइश है एक तरह से. देन दे लोग कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लेने लगे, गवर्नमेंट के कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लेने लगे, ट्रांसपोर्ट बिजनेस फॉर्म करने लगे, बड़े बड़े शॉप्स फॉर्म करने लगे, वगैरह वगैरह. ये जो प्रोसेस हुई, वहाँ से उन्होंने उनको ये भी एक्सपीरियंस हुआ कि गवर्नमेंट से कांटेक्ट करने से क्या फ़ायदा होता है, और उनके जो अपने आप में अपने पॉलिटिकल एस्पिरेशंस भी उनके बढ़ने लगे। तो इससे वो कांग्रेस को चैलेंज करने लगे, जो कि कांग्रेस की मोनोपोली है तब तक। अब उनका जो पूरा ऑरा था, जो हेलो था फ्रीडम फाइटिंग का, वो ऑरा फेड हुआ था। नेहरू चल बसे थे, एंड शास्त्री, और उनके बाद उसके बाद इंदिरा गांधी वगैरह आई, एंड कांग्रेस को एक तरह से काफ़ी इलेक्टोरल पॉलिटिक्स का कंपटीशन झेलना पड़ा। तो इसके जो मैनिफेस्टेशन थे, जैसे आई सेड, बाय लेट 60s to early 70s, you can say see them in terms of something like lot many civil society movements coming up. सिविल सोसाइटीज में काफ़ी कुछ हलचल मची हुई थी, बहुत सारे मूवमेंट चले थे। देन इलेक्टोरल कंपटीशन के तहत एक्चुअली दलितों का जो वोट बैंक का पॉलिटिक्स चालू हो गया था, और वोट बैंक्स का जो ये है वो लोग अपना समझने लगे थे। उसी के तहत एक्चुअली अंबेडकर का इम्पोर्टेंस, एक अंबेडकर का एक कॉमन काइंड ऑफ आइकनाइजेशन होने लगा कि दलित वोटों के लिए, दलित वोट एक्चुअली कम came as a very cheap vote bank because they were resourceless people, and छोटे से पैसे से भी दलितों को ल्यूर कर सकते थे, दलितों को ये कर सकते थे। अभी भी चल रहा है, दलितों के बस्ती में जाके, इस्लाम में जाके साड़ियाँ बांटो या छुड़ा कुछ दे दो, या तो उनके एजेंट्स को कुछ 10-20 लाख रुपया देने से सारा दलित वोट एक्चुअली मोनोपोलाइज कर सकते हैं। सो दिस काइंड ऑफ प्रोसेसेस एक्चुअली स्टार्टेड ऑपरेटिंग, एंड कास्ट का सैलियंस इलेक्शन में काफ़ी बढ़ने लगा। तो ऑब्वियस है, बिकॉज कास्ट इज हैज बीन द बेसिक आइडेंटिटी इन ऑफ पीपल इन इंडिया, एंड कास्ट कुड नॉट बी एक्सक्लूडेड। इफ people had to be lured to you, you had to please the caste. अभी थोड़ा सा ये देखते हैं कि बीजेपी ने वो अपना क्लेम करके कि वो कास्ट और इसका क्या कहते हैं उनका अपीजमेंट की पॉलिसी ना करते हुए, उन्होंने दोनों भी उसके लिए निगेटिवली बोलते रहे, वो कम्युनल पॉलिटिक्स और कास्ट पॉलिटिक्स नहीं करेंगे वगैरह करके। बट बेसिकली दे हैव बीन अ मोर कास्टिस्ट, एंड दे हैव बीन मोर सिस्टमैटिकली कास्टिस्ट इन क्रिएटिंग द कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी for themselves. And this constituency is basically the middle caste. तो मिडिल कास्ट को उन्होंने एक्चुअली सिस्टमैटिकली हिंदुआइज किया, बिना कास्ट के नाम लेते हुए। उन्होंने उनको काफ़ी, उन्होंने वो एक्चुअली हिंदुत्व का जो उनका ये है, उसको लेकर उन्होंने उसको एंटाइज किया और हिंदुत्वाइज कर दिया, बिकॉज उनके बगैर एक्चुअली उनका पॉलिटिक्स चल ही नहीं सकता था। आप थोड़ा सा हिस्ट्री में जाएंगे तो देखेंगे कि अप टू गोलवलकर वाज अ वेरी पॉइजनस पर्सन आइडियोलॉजिकली, एंड ही एक्चुअली uttered so many things, but he did not foresee how this politics would actually develop, and how they would create uh, or take a control of this country. He did not have an idea. एक गोलवलकर के बाद जो सर संघचालक आ गया है, उसका नाम देवरस था, देवरस, बाला साहेब देवरस। वो आदमी ने आरएसएस को पूरा ट्रांसफॉर्म कर दिया। दैट फेलो वाज अ वेरी हैड अ वेरी स्ट्रेटेजिक माइंड। उसने जाना पहली बार कि ये सारा अपना ही डिंग बजाते हुए कुछ होने वाला नहीं है, जब तक ये जो बहुजन समाज है, बहुजन, मुझे थोड़ा सा ऐतराज है इस शब्द पे, लेकिन जो दलित है, जो मिडिल कास्ट है, उनको जब तक ये जो बहुसंख्या फॉर्म करते हैं, उनको जब तक हम ल्यूर नहीं कर सकते हैं, तब तक हमको भविष्य नहीं है। वो देवरस ने जाना, और उसने पूरा एक्चुअली सारा आरएसएस का माहौल चेंज कर दिया। तो इस माहौल से ही ये सारे फिर मंदिर पॉलिटिक्स वगैरह वगैरह का जन्म हुआ, मंडल का पार्ट रहा है उसमें, और उसके काउंटर के लिए फिर मंदिर एंड ऑल दैट काइंड ऑफ थिंग हैज कम इन। सो बेसिकली शॉर्ट में ये कहूँगा कि जो दिखावा है बीजेपी का कि हम अपीसमेंट का पॉलिटिक्स नहीं करते हैं, और हम सब लोगों का साइंस कास्ट काइंड ऑफ पॉलिटिक्स करते हैं, ये जो क्लेम है ये एक एक्चुअली फेक क्लेम है। जैसे वो बहुत सारे बातों में वो झूठ फैलाते रहते हैं, इसी तरह का ये भी एक बड़ा झूठ है। तो इस तरह एक कास्ट का पॉलिटिक्स है जो इलेक्टोरल पॉलिटिक्स में हावी होने लगा। अभी आप, मैं जैसे शुरू किया कि हमारे लिए इलेक्टोरल पॉलिटिक्स को होक्स बोलना सही नहीं होगा, बिकॉज इलेक्टोरल पॉलिटिक्स हैज बीन अ कॉन्क्रीट मेथडोलॉजी फॉर choosing the representation, and representation has been uh, the the pivot of electoral democracy, the kind of democracy itself, you know. So electoral politics को ये नहीं कह सकते। ठीक है कि हमारा जो मॉडल है वो बुर्जुआ डेमोक्रेसी है, एक्नॉलेजली इट हैज बीन सो, बट इवन द रिवॉल्यूशन होने के बाद भी, सपोज द प्रोलेटेरियन रिवॉल्यूशन होता है, तब भी उसमें भी इलेक्शंस होते ही है। चाइना में भी इलेक्शन होते हैं, इज सिंगल पार्टी, एंड उसमें वो इलेक्टोरल कंपटीशन नहीं होगा, तो उसमें वो सारी बातें पैकेज में वो सारी डैम्पन हो जाएगी, जैसे कि कम्युनिटीज है, कास्ट है, और ऑल काइंड्स ऑफ द फॉल्ट लाइंस आर नॉट unscrupulously get used in communist countries. Even in Chinese politics, if you say that, the other kinds of issues are there, and there are little bit some of these fault lines also get used, but कहने का मतलब ये है कि इलेक्टोरल पॉलिटिक्स को हम निगेट नहीं कर सकते हैं। इलेक्टोरल पॉलिटिक्स रहेगा, बट इलेक्टोरल पॉलिटिक्स में भी एक कोई ऑप्शंस थे, जो ऑल्टरनेटिव थे, अगर हम वो चूज करते तो शायद ये चीजें नहीं होती। जैसे कि आप इमेजिन करिए, पीआर सिस्टम है, प्रोपोर्शनल रिप्रेजेंटेशन सिस्टम है। जैसे कि मैंने ब्रीफ में कहा है कि प्रोपोर्शनल रिप्रेजेंटेशन सिस्टम का एक वर्चू ये है कि वो एक्चुअली सब आदमी का रिप्रेजेंटेशन डिसीजन मेकिंग प्रोसेस में इंश्योर करता है। जैसे एफपीटीपी इलेक्टोरल सिस्टम आपको 49% को निगेट कर देता है। एक एक्चुअली कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी थी, और जैसे कि मैंने कहा कि ये बेसिकली लोगों के ओपिनियन को वैल्यू नहीं करता है, ऐसा मैनेजमेंट स्ट्रेटेजी, जैसे तुम इलेक्शन किस तरह करते हो, पार्टी की स्ट्रेटेजी क्या है, उसको ज्यादा वैल्यू करती है। द मैनेजमेंट मैटर्स मोर देन पीपल्स ओपिनियन, and that's why the modern technique has started getting used now। कैसे ये होता है कि जो भी है आपको एब्सोल्यूट टर्म में 50% वोट मिलाने की जरूरत नहीं है। वो तो वो ब्रॉड बेसिस पे हो गया कि सपोज देर आर टू कॉम्पिटिंग पार्टीज, सो एक को मिला है 50%, 51%, और दूसरों को मिला है 49%। सो 51% वाला विक्टर हो जाएगा, और 49% वाले जितने भी सारे 49% वोट लोगों ने दिए हैं उसको, उनका ओपिनियन को कोई वैल्यू नहीं रहेगा 5 साल तक। ये जो सिस्टम है अभी, ये सिस्टम का इफ यू स्ट्रेच टू द एक्सट्रीम्स, एक तमिलनाडु में कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी रही है, मुझे मोदाकुरुचि या कुछ ऐसा कुछ नाम है, तमिल नाम है कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी का, और 96 के असेंबली इलेक्शन में वहां पे 1000 से ज्यादा कैंडिडेट्स कॉन्टेस्ट किए वोट। तो आप सोच सकते हैं उसमें, ठीक है कि द विनिंग कैंडिडेट और डीएम के कैंडिडेट विच प्रोबेबली गॉट 54% और समथिंग लाइक, but most of the people, hundreds of people actually got zero vote, when 0% votes. They must have got something like 40 votes, 50 votes, like that. So it's obvious, you know, it doesn't require, it's not a big brainer, you know, to understand that if you actually make 10 people contest, the share of that, if they are equally competitive, the share of that will be coming up to something like 10%. If you increase the number, something like 100%, 100 people contest the election, then the share would come to 1% kind of thing, if they are equally competitive. Unlike that Modakurichi constituency, they were not equally competitive, and as a result, the winner got 56.5% vote. As a result, something like your strategic prowess actually overpowers the people's opinion. People opinion को कोई value नहीं रहता है, और जो they, as a matter of fact, something like if you take stage it to extremity, this kind of paradigm gets created, that majority people are, um, their opinions do not prevail, and the minority's opinion actually can create the unchallenged autocracy. तो हम लोग अगर ये सोचते कि हाँ, जब ये कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन हमारा बना एंड तब हमने अगर पीआर सिस्टम वगैरह किया होता, तो शायद चीज़ें कुछ डिफरेंट होती। अ, ये भी सोच सकते हैं कि आप अंबेडकर के बारे में जानते हैं कि अंबेडकर का सारा कुछ जो लाइफ है, मेजर पार्ट ऑफ स्ट्रगल हैज बीन फॉर रिप्रेजेंटेशन. Okay, representation in legislation, representation in jobs, representation in educational institution, and so on and so forth. So his basic struggle has been for representation. Now, in he has taken this framework of APTP framework as a default framework, and उसी के तहत उन्होंने ये स्ट्रगल वेज किया, एंड बहुत स्ट्रगल वेज किया. सपोज उन्होंने कभी कल्पना की होती कि पीआर सिस्टम अगर होता, तो ऑलरेडी दलितों का जो वोट शेयर है उसके अनुपात में उनको शेयर पार्लियामेंट में, लेजिस्लेशन में या कहीं पे भी मिल जाता. ओके, तो ये सारी चीजें उसके लिए स्ट्रगल करने की भी जरूरत नहीं थी. एक जो फ्रेमवर्क का स्विचिंग का क्वेश्चन था कि अगर ये फ्रेमवर्क को अगर स्विच करते हैं और पीआर सिस्टम लाते, तो ये सारी स्ट्रगल की जरूरत ही नहीं थी इनको. तो वो और बाबा साहब ने जो किया था वो बेसिकली पॉलिटिकल रिप्रेजेंटेशन को मद्देनजर रखते हुए उन्होंने स्ट्रगल स्टार्ट किए, और बाकी के जो रिजर्वेशन है बाद में आए. बाकी के रिजर्वेशन, इफ यू हैव एक्चुअली वोट इन पार्लियामेंट और लेजिस्लेशन, दे वुड कम ऑटोमेटिकली. He himself only said rather that if people are politically, economically, and educationally uh, empowered, and all these kinds of things will fall in line automatically. That is his only own statement rather. So ये जो बातें हैं, एक within the given framework with its own limitations etc, जो कास्टिज्म है वगैरह को डैम्पन करने की बात थी. कास्टिज्म को डैम्पन करने की और भी बातें थी जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के वक्त में, जैसे मैं टिपिकली रिजर्वेशन वगैरह को प्रॉब्लमेटाइज करता रहता हूँ, तो वो भी शायद मैं बोल दूं और देन आई वुड लाइक टू स्टॉप. तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन मेकिंग में जब बातें आई जो कि अनटचेबिलिटी, जिसके के खिलाफ सारे ही हिंदू रिफॉर्मर, जो अपर कास्ट रिफॉर्मर्स थे शुरू से लेके 19th सेंचुरी से लेके 1947 तक, सारे ही जो कास्ट अपर कास्ट रिफॉर्मर्स थे वो अनटचेबिलिटी के खिलाफ थे. जब उनको एक्चुअली वेस्टर्न सिविलाइजेशन का पाला पड़ा और बाद में उनके इसमें कुछ इंफेरिटी कॉम्प्लेक्स सा डेवलप हुआ कि दिस काइंड ऑफ inhuman system cannot be sort of uh, one cannot be proud of, and that needs to go. तो अनटचेबिलिटी के खिलाफ थे, और कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन जब was being drafted, that time they brought in a resolution that untouchability would be abolished. Now untouchability is just an aspect of caste. The untouchability cannot be abolished unless the castes are abolished. And why did they did not abolish caste there? Therefore, is because they took an alibi that they wanted to do social justice to the low caste people. What is that social justice? It's a reservation. The various reservations, etc., were brought in, and in with that kind of alibi, they preserved the caste system. Now रिजर्वेशन की जो पैदाइश है एक्चुअली कॉलोनियल टाइम्स की है. 1937 में जब से दी 1935 एक्ट के तहत जब शेड्यूल कास्ट का निर्माण हुआ, तब किसी ने ये जाना नहीं कि एक्चुअली जहाँ तक लोअर कास्ट का सवाल था, उनका जो अम्बिलिकल कॉर्ड है, जो रिचुअल कास्ट सिस्टम का, जो हिंदुइज्म से कनेक्टेड था, वो एक्चुअली स्नैप हो चुका था. Scheduled caste was not did not have anything to do with Hinduistic ritualistic Hinduism के ritualistic caste. So actually speaking, the caste could have been abolished as well, keeping the scheduled caste as a something like uh, the identity. So that did not happen. They happily kept. The colonial times में जो शेड्यूल कास्ट शेड्यूल था, वो ऑलमोस्ट क्लोज शेड्यूल था. उन्होंने काफ़ी सर्वे करके उनको बनाया था, और वो क्लोज शेड्यूल था. लेकिन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन आने के बाद उन्होंने इसको सारा ओपन कर दिया, और रिजर्वेशन जो है वो एक्सटेंड कर दिए. शेड्यूल ट्राइब्स को एक्सटेंड कर दिए, शेड्यूल जो बैकवर्ड कास्ट को एक्सटेंड कर दिए, and they something like a casteized society. And typically you can see that India is more casteized today than ever before. This is not a rhetorical thing, it's something like an empirical reality. So ये हमें समझना चाहिए कि इसमें काफ़ी चालबाजियाँ आई है, जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन मेकिंग के टर्म्स में ही एक्चुअली कास्ट को प्रिजर्व किया गया, और अल्टीमेटली इस उद्देश्य से कि वो एक्चुअली इसके तहत वो अपना कास्ट रूल परपेचुएट करने के लिए सहारा बने. I think I would stop here, as I said, and then probably look forward to your questions, and may something may additionally come to that. Thank you so much.
Hello? Hello? Hello, Professor.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much, Professor, for the talk. Abhi, I think we'll take up some questions for an hour. Does that work?
Yeah, yeah. No problem.
Okay. Um, so
I do not relish really pontificate. The one-sided lectures is very difficult for me.
yeah,
I
yeah.
like to have question answers. So
uh,
I might be better in question answering. If you ask me
uh,
specific questions, I would
yeah,
answer.
yeah. All right, all right. तो जितने भी साथी है वो क्वेश्चंस पूछ सकते हैं. आप अपना माइक ऑन करके भी पूछ सकते हैं, बट हैंड रेज कर लीजिए ताकि मैं एक एक करके बुला दूं. नहीं तो आप कमेंट में टाइप भी कर सकते हैं. The first question is, sir, why would you be uncomfortable using the word Bahujan?
Okay. बहुजन बहुजन ये जो वर्ड आता है ना, ये बहुजन एक्चुअली बुद्धा ने भी यूज किया था बहुजन, एंड तब कास्ट वास्ट के टर्म पे यूज नहीं किया. जब बहुजन एक्चुअली यूज होता है एंड ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ कास्ट, on as in something like a summation of caste, then I have an objection, because it does not serve the purpose. It actually puts in all contradictions under the carpet and creates something like a illusory identity. So because of that, I'm not comfortable with Bahujan. Is it okay, or should I elaborate? Like काशीराम, काशीराम जी थे, उनको मैं पर्सनल भी कुछ मुलाकातें हुई थी और काफ़ी बातें हुई थी. तो काशीराम ने भी जो बहुजन किया था, वो एक्चुअली he was also a very good strategist, and he conceived something like in the given framework of electoral politics, how to create his own constituency. He was quite good at that, and he created a Bahujan. But Bahujan, if he actually created something like sans caste terms, that could have been a very lastingly useful, but he was a practical person, the real politics demands that they some what is actually doable tomorrow. So that way, actually, Kashiram then assimilated all kinds of things, minorities and scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, backward caste, etc., etc. So what happens is the backward caste, there's a contradictions between the backward caste and Dalit that is actually camouflaged. Even Phule, for that matter, Mahatma Phule in Maharashtra, the pioneer of non-Brahmin movement, he also, rather the first person to create this kind of uh, uh, identity. His name was something like Shudra Ati Shudra. The, his nomenclature is Shudra Ati Shudra, but it actually assimilates everybody and makes a Baujan. So he also did the same thing, and you can learn from his Satyashodak movement itself in Maharashtra. Now, not many people might not be knowing in detail, but symbolically, when Mahatma Phule died, and Dalits wanted to go for his condolence meeting, they were not allowed in. The Marathas had taken the control of the everything, and Dalits were excluded. So this is what keeps happening. Now after Bahujan came in, so many things have been happening, and there is nothing like even in Kashiram Bahujan Samaj Party, only the dominant part has been Chamar Jatos. Their success actually is attributed to the peculiar demography that existed in UP. He could not even dent Punjab, his own state. He could not make a mark there, and nowhere else. Not even the next state, the West Bengal, where Dalits actually are very populous caste, populous people. Here, there also he could not click. It clicked in UP because of the Chamar Jato equation. It's a very peculiar demography which made it possible. So nowhere there is an evidence that this Bahujan really succeeded.
Hi,
Eh,
Professor. Can I go, Lakshita?
yeah, you can.
Okay. Hi, Professor. I'm Sachin from Maharashtra only. In
I
the beginning of your session, you were talking about democracy itself is a hoax. So I just want to know more on this. What will be the alternative for this if democracy itself is a hoax? And second question will be around the representation, political representation from the lower caste communities in Vidhan Sabha, Vidhan Parishad, and even in Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. There are couple of people from the different parties, but the agenda is not driven by their development or welfare development, but it is only they are driving through their party's agenda. So what do you think on this? Kindly share. Yeah.
okay. Thank you. Uh, Democracy in India, as it is being run, that is hoax. So I am not dismissing democracy per se. Democracy alternate would be dictatorship, which would be quite dangerous. But we actually have a dictatorship in the garb of democracy, and that is why it is a hoax. So that perhaps when you use the word, hoax, so I related with that. It's not an electoral politics which actually is a hoax, but the democracy is hoax, for which the electoral politics is deployed. And I already said democracy is a very all-encompassing term, but the basic meaning of it is that the opinion of people are sovereign, and opinion of people would prevail. So, is it really happening, and which kind of system actually would ensure that kind of paradigm where people's opinion would really matter, needs to be thought out, and in that way people should have uh, considered the alternative for electoral the election system. because election system is a vehicle by which actually democracy uh, uh, operated. That's the engine by which a democracy runs. So in that context, really, I brought in that there was uh, the different kind of intriguing politics played to adopt the PTP model of election system. There was an alternative available, and India, like country, could have been very obviously desirable uh, to adopt, but our people have not done that, and that is what actually created democracy as a hoax here. As regard your second part of the question is that yeah, there are lot many people, but then they are not using their representation for uh, uh, interests of their constituencies, but the party agendas, would be operated through that. That is obvious to happen. For instance, take an example of this result system, uh, that Dalit constitute a single biggest block in the parliament as well as any legislation. In terms of say something like an identity, that may be the single biggest block in the parliament and any legislature. But the history is that not a single person actually has uttered or asked a single question. It might be a strange kind of statement, but the bottom line is that these people really do not concern with anything, Dalit. They have not asked any kind of question system. Ambedkar envisaged that these people, if they are sent to legislative, they would actually become an umbrella for the rest of the people, and they will legislate such kind of policies which would be useful to the working classes. That has never happened. That has never happened, and in something like in absolute terms, it is not something like an extent or anything. Nothing they have really served right over 70 years. So the only the party agenda. This is an extreme kind of example, but this actually is applicable to other people also. So if you the tribal people also similar kind of thing can be said, or even the Muslims and other people also this the same thing happens. While electioneering etc. They might claim so many things of people's welfare etc. But after reaching the parliament or legislature, their behavior is totally different because the real politics actually drives it. There are a lot many dimensions that could be brought in, but that might actually confuse the issues. Let us just speak because there is a role of money, muscle power, everything in Indian election system that also needs to be taken into account. So this is what happens. The the kind of development, the quote unquote vikas, on basis of which actually BJP has thrived and keeps on claiming that they are only for Vikas and they are not for replacement politics, etc. It's all absolutely fraud. The kind of Vikas is another vehicle by which the electoral system runs. Let me explain to you that the kind of money that gets involved in this electoral system uh, is a huge, and where from this money comes. What is the motivation for anybody for that matter to get elected and get into politics and waste his time? It's just the money. After all, it's money. It's an investment that they make in an election system, get elected, and they actually would look at how they recover that investment. So that is the basic logic, you know. And the Vikas, Vikas is basically what is Vikas? Vikas is the project to build flyovers, to build tunnels, to bring bullet trains, to bring build airports, etc., etc. These all things, if you look at it in class terms, it is not useful to the people who are at the bottom line, who are the lower caste or constitute the lower kinds of segment. It is not at all useful to them, and the crores and billions of rupees are spent on that because they basically get them the uh, chunk from which they can take out their commission. That is their return. So this is a built-in thing, it's an integral mechanism of the election system and electoral politics, and that also need to be paid this thing. This actually constitutes the grammar of the election system, and that cannot be overlooked. The caste is it is caste is etc. Actually uh, is the vehicle to get into, but the money also is equally something like it runs in the caste and caste community etc. together, and another wheel could be something like a money and muscle power on which the entire superstructure has been operating.
Um,
Thank you, Professor. This was really insightful. I would like to have discussion later on, but this time, thank you. Yeah,
so, Professor, we can do this. We can take two questions from the people who have raised their hands and two from the comment section. So, Avanti, अभी आप अपना question पूछ सकते हैं.
Okay.
अवंती, आप अनम्यूट करके क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं. ओके, जब तक अवंती नहीं है, गोपाल आप पूछ सकते हैं.
हेलो।
ओके, या अवंती पूछ लीजिए.
सर, मुझे पूछना था कि इंडिया में डेमोक्रेटिक स्टूडेंट मूवमेंट जो है, हमारा क्या रोल है टू एनिहिलेट कास्ट या इस मूवमेंट के साथ जुड़ने का, एंड हाउ कैन वी कंट्रीब्यूट टू दैट?
Uh, is it all order to talk about annihilation of caste, Probably the only one formula through all my life I could give to annihilate caste is to not talk caste. Okay, that is my considered opinion. Until you actually keep on uttering this thing, caste, and so you'll have to find an alternate kind of idiom to uh, do your politics or to articulate your things. With caste is basically a divisive entity. It is unlike any. It only knows how to split. It's something like there is no finite number of castes that exist in India. It is a notion of hierarchy. Caste is basically a notion of hierarchy. It actually that is a deep driven into the minds of Indians that they think in terms of something like a superiority or inferiority. They cannot treat their co-equals, co-locators as equals. So that is basically caste. So you utter caste and you bring in entire this package automatically. So there is no way that you talk caste and you will actually annihilate caste. This has been the bane of Ambedkar correct politics. Ambedkar tried creating alternate kinds of things, etc., but he could not succeed and actually kept on talking about caste and recoil back to caste, etc. And because of that in terms of annihilation of caste, he could not make any dent. There are many people who disagree with me that there has been a lot of development among this thing that created a Dalit middle class and all that kind of thing. I agree with that, but that in terms of annihilation of caste, they have not made any dent. It remained intact, and even this kind of a bunch of middle classes that have cropped up among Dalits also talk of caste. They are not less casteist than even others. So that is the thing. So my only suggestion would be that you try to think through and create that kind of paradigm. Maybe in future it would definitely work. Class is the thing. When I talk caste, people actually brand me as Marxist. That is for the list particularly, that they have made an equation that Marx is against Ambedkar, and therefore whosoever is Marxist, that they are not, they do not belong to them, etc. They are their enemy, etc. I don't care. I don't want to. I do not have to fight an election, so that I don't care. Uh, but the, on serious note, people should think through that caste cannot be a category on the basis of which you can build emancipatory movement. Period.
Sir, one more question, sir, about the caste census. Sir, how far uh, will it, like, how far does it influence the upcoming elections and the parties that are pushing for caste census? How much can they contribute to anti-caste movement or the?
Okay. In tactical terms, in tactic meaning, I mean 24 elections. So in tactical terms, the caste census could be good. In sense that the biggest challenge before anti-BJP bloc is to break this middle caste consolidation, to sensitize them. They are actually, their interests are antithetical to the interest of the the upper strata, which runs the BJP. They are the field, the foot soldiers of BJP. That kind of awareness is needs to be brought in to break this nexus. And for that, probably the caste census will help, because when caste census actually puts the figures, there is a lot of ignorance, and the biggest challenge would be that ignorance itself. So many people, the the kind of tribe they created, BJP created, the tribe of bhaktas, so no rational, nothing actually works. They're mm, nothing can communicate to them. But there could be a hope, those people who are genuinely ignorant because of lack of information, etc. For them, the caste census could be sensitizing that these are the numbers, this is the kind of thing, and now, for instance, like the sections of the that would come up, the sections of the caste census, they are this much percent, and the the real power holders, those castes, actually grab the major share. Already the Bihar caste census actually threw up such kind of things. As a general knowledge, it is not inconceivable. The kind of statement they make through caste census, etc., it was not inconceivable. But all said and done, the caste census should bring in that force of numbers, force, and numbers actually has its own magic. So, in a very tactical term, that might help. And in today's paradigm, to talk of caste annihilation is a probably very utopian. Utopian in sense, it was utopia, all right, but I do not discount utopia. We should emit utopias, but the kind of things that we find ourselves in, to talk of caste census is very, very dreamlike. It's light years away. So taking things as they are, so the caste census might help in for a 24 elections. Let them try it. At least the kind of discourse they unleash, that also would help bringing this middle caste to census. And if that block is broken to some extent also, so we could save ourselves in 24 elections, because that is a very dangerous point we are standing on. That if the 24 elections are won by BJP and the same kind of junta comes to power, there will not be any more election, meaningful election henceforth. and there may not be anything that would be left for a democratic process. So that's the danger. Uh, it's not that if the 24 election BJP is lost and somebody else comes, the things should improve. No, no, I do not mean that. Things should go here onward. Only it would put the deterioration for some time. But those people who actually come to power will take the things from here on. You know, so there is nothing positive that is going to come through elections. That is for sure. India will never be the same again. Mm.
Okay, so there's another question. Where do I situate the woman's question in
Can
the
I
panel?
ask?
Oh
Can
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
ask?
of
Yeah,
course, of course.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir, for the insightful discussion. And thank you for saying the phrase annihilation of caste in this discussion, which is much needed and very much relevant in the society today. So, sir, my question is. Um, where do I situate the woman's question in the oppressive system of caste in today's India? Because when we look at the fundamental creation of caste itself, women's reproductive potential is eternally exploited to create caste, as Periyar pointed out. So, how can that be looked at in the theme of political representation that has been discussed in today's theme?
It's very important questions. Women question always is important, in which actually the complaint is made against me is that I do not so much talk about that question. It's not. It is a different way. Something like, as I said, something like don't talk of caste. So if you are aiming at caste annihilation, so similarly, I do not specifically talk about women's question. Meaning, I have not talked so much about women's question particularly because it is actually subsumed in the caste question. The women are the carrier of basically caste, and that question becomes a predominant from that viewpoint. Uh, I, the women's question also is the question of similar nature. If you actually create a different kind of paradigm and do not talk of gender as a in totality, it's not something like women only. There will be many other genders now in vogue. So if you do not talk of that, and you really do not distinguish them and take them as a part of you, probably that is the way. The emancipatory politics would be articulated in those forms better than talking about in fragments. Take it to something like a gender question, then caste question, then comes the tribal question or environment question. There are so many questions in the real life. These if you actually consider in a fragment, so we only get the fragmented solutions. So the emancipation have to be holistic, and holistic emancipation should be brought. But it is not to undermine these kinds of questions. Even if it is said that even if the revolution comes, the bother was Ambedkarian bother for that matter was that even the revolution comes, people will like to confront caste. So is the case of gender. Howsoever you actually you imagine the emancipatory paradigm, the gender question would not be totally eliminated. But in course of time, if you take it this thing, it could be eliminated. Now, gender question or particularly woman question is entangled with the institution of marriage itself. You know, so that basically brings in the woman's role. The, the role in the social production. Because women are confined and the marriages assign them a particular role and all those kinds of things. Then the inheritance system, all that is a part of marriage system. So this marriage system will have to be uh, rethought to um, really bring in some kind of sensible solution to women's question. So these are all very, very distinct kinds of, and something like in today's situation, they would look like very far off utopia. So the via media solution could be that okay, step by step you can have, do not talk about so much thing, but kind of operate with the degendered kind of platform, you know, in a class politics or something like that. And there are lots of prototypes of this kind in the activist circles that can be seen. I have myself experienced. I ran a civil rights organization where the majority people are women, but we never talked about that, and we never distinguished the gendered roles in the organization. So it was operating. So you cannot have very perfection. So the people could be sensitive that if anything unknowingly happens, they should be ready to acknowledge that and rectify. So slowly we can eliminate this kind of discriminatory attitudes, and things would be better. I don't think I can elaborate more than that.
So just one more point. Like I'm not fragmenting the parts that are important to the caste question. Actually, I brought out separately women's thing because it's fundamentally it is fundamental to creation of caste, because you just mentioned not to mention caste at all. So it also is a part of ending endogamy, like where only intercaste, where the Brahmins will marry Brahmins and all, etc., etc. So when we talk about women in different caste divisions, their sexuality and reproductive rights are controlled, and the choices where they can marry is also controlled. So don't you think that's something very much fundamental to the caste question itself, and we should begin at the beginning rather than of course it is it's a holistic perspective, as you pointed out, because when we see the composition of manual scavengers, 90% belong to Dalits, and out of those Dalits, 98% of the women are the ones who actually handle fecal matter. So, a woman's question is particularly or separately important because of their potential when it comes to fertility, reproduction, and sexuality, which is controlled by religion to create these very caste systems.
Yeah, no, nobody can deny that. So, and I also, for one, I have not said anything against. I am absolutely in agreement with. But how do you deal with that? That is the challenge. You know, these are practical things, and one needs to be very thoughtful in dealing with, because if we actually take it in a what I meant was fragmentary manner, something like women's question, etc., then it actually becomes a different kind of thing. It becomes a intersectional kind of thing. Okay, so and probably might uh, create a diversionary uh, what to call place in the entire political system. There is no true opinion about women be the women's question being integral with the caste system, and the women are basically, because of their sexuality, reproductive things, etc., are the carrier of the caste system. That is said right from Ambedkar's days. So there is no denial of the fact. But the problem, as I see, is a very complex. You know, how do you deal with practically? So practically dealing will be only like this: that if you theoretically consider the thing, why women are uh, uh, assigned a separate role, or the, as you rightly put it, in a very extreme example of the scavenging uh, uh, vocation, where women dominate.
Yes, yes,
Yeah. So
yes,
these are kind of thing, but where from it came? Because they got married into their own caste and they actually internalized that that is their work, and this has been going on because there has not been internal questioning as well as there has not been an easy solution from an outside. So because of that, this has been running. But tomorrow, something like uh, a stray woman from that bunch actually gets educated and she defies these kinds of things and marries outside to a choice person. Probably it's a step forward. So that kind of thing will has to be tried out. As far as in terms of politics or in other terms of activism, how it could be dealt with, it could be dealt with that you in a in a microcosm of your activist organization or something like that, you do not talk about, you do not see women as a different and do not anyway try to differentiate that between them, behave naturally, but listen to them because they are ultimately the victim. So if by chance any male member or from the male group, etc., anything happens, so you should be open to listen to them and try to sort of correct yourself. So that attitude probably brings in things. That has been my experience. Speaking the practical term, theory, I have already indicated the theory that there is something wrong with the marriage system itself, which actually brings in enslavement of women. So we'll have to create a, we'll have to rethink marriage institution so that this social production, uh, the that woman it is not her crime. It is actually contribution that she bears a child. But child is actually brought in as something like a member of the society, and it ought to be the society's onus to rear the child. It is not the woman's responsibility to bring up the child and get tied up for the domestic thing. So this kind of radical ways, uh, women also should think through, not get confined to the, not get bogged down with the present framework, given framework, and try to find a solution within. It might sound radical, and there could be, you see, it could be approached all whether it is annihilation of caste or annihilation of gender discrimination or all these kinds of talk could be approached through the clarity of our long-term direction and the short-term kind of tactical directions. Even in revolution, thinking of revolution, etc., this is relevant. That what is our goal? What we want to achieve? And for that, the line could not be straight line. In practical terms, that would be we can travel only through zigzag thing. So that zigzag could be appearing at times reverse, opposite to the direction. But that if you are conscious that they are helping out to move yourself in the direction of the goal, probably that is correct. So this is very important to understand this kind of this piece of uh, thing. Does it?
yes, sir. Very true, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Uh,
Can I ask my question?
yes, yes, yes.
Okay, I would like to thank Sir for coming here and bsCEM for hosting you. I love your work. My first, like, sort of a personal favor was there's a book on S. Sridhar. I couldn't find anywhere on the internet. I was hoping if you have a digital copy, somehow I can get it from you. And my first question is like extending what the debate has gone the way. Uh, uh, Can you like name some historical struggles where like your tactic of like, sort of ignoring the caste or the gender question it has somehow worked out? Because in West Bengal or Kerala we see that the Brahmins the communists they have ignored the question and it still hasn't done any favors. So it's a sort of
Which book you spoke of?
S. Sridhar Nivasan, in the memory of Sridhar Nivasan, it was, I think, so somewhere in 2015-14,
Oh,
there was a
oh, oh,
memorial held.
oh, that booklet. It's a booklet, no?
Yeah.
You said,
I couldn't find it on the internet. So I was hoping you would have it.
oh, it's not on the internet probably. I am not aware. I'll try to put it on the internet. Okay, fine. And talking about what? The Brahmins. What was the next part? Can you repeat?
The question was sort of what struggle you're proposing in the sense we should ignore caste or maybe the gender question, and it will then we should wage a struggle because in West Bengal and Kerala, as we have seen, the communists there they explicitly ignored the question, and it still didn't do anyone any favors. The condition is just as worse, if not worse, for the people there. So, what like can you name some historical struggles where this sort of strategy worked out, or what exactly are you proposing that would be different from their struggles?
Okay. No, we have a habit of getting bogged down with what happened in the past. The past needs to be critically seen. The past should be used only for learning. If it is not useful, you can just ignore it. Like the past of a communist movement, for instance, you need not uh, excessively get bogged down with what mistakes they have done. So there are obvious mistakes they have not actually confronted the Indian reality, and that they have tried out, bookish way, what they are borrowed from outside, and that has not worked, not at all worked. So let us forget about it. But the here onward, I also thought through, what has been wrong in one of my introduction to leftward books, that Ambedkar's book, but I wrote a longest introduction. You probably can go through, and I have, in a, as regards past, I have written something like what has happened, and both sides there were how they have actually accumulated wrongs and amplified wrongs. But that is not a thing. How these streams should converge. That was my approach. Now now from there on, now things, lots of water has flown down the Ganges, sort of, and now probably we cannot think in even those terms. So what needs to be done is the same thing that I have been speaking of. Like there have been many basic conceptual confusions that have crept in the movement. Like in communist movement, talking about the global movement, I'm saying I'm not confined to India. Like these concepts, like modes of production, the conception of class itself, the caste struggle, and the concept of evolution itself. These all need to be rethought. So I have given certain kinds of clarification in my ways, and they deviate from. Uh, I would not say Marx, because I find Marx was quite perceptive about it, and he has not elaborated so much. Marx actually given something like a mathematical formula, models, but people thereafter had to develop those, and which has not happened. So, so that needs to be understood firstly. That model needs to be understood. But I'm not on that. In practical terms, as of today, uh, we'll have to recreate the movement from scratch. The students are the harbingers of that. I'm aware, because we are past our time. We cannot do that. And anyway, for you also, the new generation, the newborn people would be the torch bearers. So they have to take things. Our only suggestion would be, or our only expectation is that they should not go on wrong track. Your fundamentals should be very clean and clear. And for that, the thing, uh, it is important to understand it in threadbare, the situation that we are in today, what are the forces that are acting against the larger, the interest of the larger people, and how to get over. It's a matter of something like a strategy thinking. People will have to do. In activist circle, these aspects again get missed out. They get onto activism and other things get uh, sort of ignored. So I would suggest that you think through these 2 3 concepts that I spoke about. Like, if you are believing in Marxist framework, then these need to be thought about. What is revolution? How do you mean revolution? Not in Indian terms, but in the global way. What could be uh, really termed as revolution? What could be mode of production? There comes in the Marxist framework. In what sense Marx talks about mode of production? How the classes could be conceived? Because class is the vehicle of bringing about revolution. So the conception of class should be very clean and clear. So that all these things are very, very important. So these are crucial things. Probably you can think through. Uh, my writings are around. You can go through. They are not claiming that I'm saying the last word or I am right or wrong, but I will help you think through this to because your clarity is your own. I cannot, we cannot borrow from someone. So that needs to be done first. And as regard Indian things, if these things are clear, then things will fall in line. Like, as I said, that caste etc actually gets subsumed in the class itself. That is my contention. So the class struggle and class annihilation, etc., would be made easy through this route. You know.
Can we move on to the next question? तो राकेश आलम, आप अपना नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं. हेलो. 1 सेकेंड. अच्छा, उनका माइक ऑन नहीं है, वो बस ऑन.
जी सर, मेरा नाम सहीनु इच्छामी, स्टेट महाराष्ट्र, डिस्ट्रिक्ट गढ़चिरौली से आया हूँ.
अच्छा.
मेरा एक सवाल ऐसा है कि सर, हमारा गढ़चिरौली डिस्ट्रिक्ट में रोजगार और विकास के नाम से हमारा गढ़चिरौली जिला में 25 कदम सरकार प्रस्तावित किया गया है और ये 25 कदम 40,900 हेक्टेयर जमीन पर है. लेकिन ये कदम रोजगार, विकास, विस्थापन या विनाश, इस सवाल का सुझाव मुझे हिंदी में बताइए सर.
मैं वाकिफ हूँ यार, गढ़चिरौली में क्या हो रहा है वगैरह वगैरह. और मुझे मालूम है सब कुछ. और हमारे दोस्त लोग थे, वो एक्चुअली काम भी कर रहे थे वहाँ पे, अभी जेल में है. ओके, हमारे साथ. तो ऐसा नहीं कि मैं नहीं जानता हूँ. ये एक एन ऑनगोइंग स्ट्रगल है, जो कि करते रहना पड़ेगा. बट ये जो इतना फोर्सेस ये है कि लोगों को जागरूक करके लोगों के लोकल लेवल पे रेजिस्टेंस वगैरह अगर तैयार करें तो ये मुमकिन है. बट ये कल मुमकिन था, आज और नामुमकिन सा लग रहा है. बिकॉज थोड़े से भी आप रास्ते पे आएंगे तो आपको लेबल चिपकाया जाएगा, माओइस्ट है वगैरह वगैरह करके. और अंदर डाल देंगे या गोली मार देंगे या कुछ भी हो रहा है। गडचिरोली में आप जानते ही होंगे कि क्या क्या होता आया है शुरू से लेकर। तो इसका कोई इजी सॉल्यूशन नहीं है और ये डिस्कशन की बात नहीं है। समथिंग लाइक unless all the people out there in local ways and you'll have to मैंने आपको बहुत सारे लोगों को समझा के लोगों को जागरूक करना पड़ेगा और इसका प्रतिकार करना पड़ेगा। तो यही एक है बिकॉज ऐसे स्ट्रक्चरल मामले तौर पे तो कुछ भी नहीं हो रहा है ना। ग्राम सभा उसको मैनिपुलेट करते हैं, एनवायरनमेंट क्लियरेंसेस है नहीं है। तो जहाँ भी उनको कुछ ये चाहिए वहाँ पे सरेआम वो एक्चुअली फॉरेस्ट जमीन दे रहे हैं एंड कुछ भी कर रहे हैं। तो ऐसा यहाँ पे नहीं है सही। बहुत सारी जगह पे है जो भी आदिवासी बहुल एरियाज है ना, वहाँ पे खनिज संपत्ति बहुत सारी है और वो खनिज संपत्ति कैपिटलिस्ट को चाहिए बिकॉज इंडिया हैज बीन अ सिंक फॉर ऑल दीज रिसोर्सेज from world over. Many other things are many very rare kinds of minerals also are to be dug out from these lands. So we do not know for now. So many this there will be a havoc created. यहाँ पे बहुत सारा कुछ क्या बोलेंगे हैवॉक हो जाएगा जो हो रहा है आगे चलकर। तो इसको अगर रोकना, हम रोकने की बात कर सकते हैं और रोक कौन सकते हैं कि लोग अगर इकट्ठा आ गए और प्रतिकार करें। बहुत सारे ऐसे उदाहरण भी है जो लोग रोकने में सफल हुए हैं। लेकिन आजकल जो मामला है कि लोगों को भी डर लगता है लोगों को आगे आने में। तो वो भी एक बेसिक चैलेंजेस अभी उभर रहे हैं क्योंकि जानते हैं आप, और 24 के बाद क्या होगा वो भी आपको कल्पना है कि क्या होने वाला है। तो इसके लिए तो इजी सॉल्यूशन है नहीं। आप
हेलो सर।
महेश राउत को जानते होंगे ना, महेश राउत। तो मेरे साथ था वो तलोजा में। तो अभी भी बेचारे को बेल तक नहीं मिला है। वो भी विस्थापन ये जो सूरजगढ़ वगैरह वगैरह परिसर में जो ये था उसमें काम कर रहा था और बस उसको ये लेबल चिपकाने की बात है। और लेबल तो सरकार तो किसी भी इसको चिपका सकती है। जैसे कि हमारे सिविल राइट्स की ऑर्गेनाइजेशन थी सीपीडीआर को, सीपीडीआर का नाम जानते होंगे आप, गढ़चिरौली में होते हुए। तो उसको भी उन्होंने बैंड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन करके डिक्लेयर कर दिया। हम क्या कर सकते हैं, बस यही बात, लेक्चर मार सकते हैं और क्या कर सकते हैं। काम करने की तो स्पेस ही नहीं रखा है ना वो लोग।
वेरी ट्रू, मतलब सच में। हम नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन की तरफ बढ़ते हैं। संतोष, आप अपना क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं।
Hello sir, my name is Santosh. I am public policy student at TISS Hyderabad. So I have a question that the two of the most oppressed community in Indian subcontinent are the Dalit and Adivasi. So I myself, when I study by the lens of policy, तो मुझे ये मतलब ये थोड़ा एक इसमें भी तो थोड़ा फर्क दिखता हो कि जो दलित समुदाय है वो प्रयास करता है कि अपने जो डिमांड्स है, अपने जो इश्यूज है, बाय द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल में धरना आंदोलन इस वे से जितना हो सके उसको अपने राइट्स को पाने का कोशिश करता है। लेकिन जब आदिवासी के संदर्भ में प्रश्न आता है, जो उनकी जल जंगल और जमीन का प्रश्न आता है, तो मतलब काफी मतलब झारखंड में, गढ़चिरौली में, आंध्र प्रदेश, तेलंगाना में, इस प्रदेश में मतलब आदिवासियों ने प्रयत्न किया है कि इस मतलब बाय द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल मीन्स उन्होंने प्रयास किया है कि अपनी जमीन को कैसे बचा पाए। लेकिन स्टिल काफी काफी मामलों के बारे में वो अपने जल जंगल जमीन को नहीं बचा पाए। तो उनका ये मतलब उनमें भी ये कब मुझे 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 थोड़ा पढ़ा हो तो मुझे लगता है कि उनको लगता है कि यार कब तक हम इफ वी गो बाय धरना आंदोलन बाय कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल मीन्स ये हमको हमारी जमीन हमारा घर नहीं मिल सकता। तो आप कैसे आदिवासी को इस पर्सपेक्टिव में आदिवासियों ने क्या करना चाहिए आपको कैसा लगता है इसको आप कैसे देंगे उत्तर?
संतोष, आपका क्वेश्चन वो पहले जो पूछा था ना गडचिरोली के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में, उससे जुड़ा हुआ है। मुझे तो पहली बार ये नहीं समझता है कि ये कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल मेथड क्या होते हैं, क्योंकि इवन बाबा साहब ने भी बोला था दलितों को कि इसके आगे में अभी कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन है और इसके आगे में सिर्फ अपना जो अपने जो डिमांड्स है वो हासिल करने के लिए आपने कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल मेथड यूज करना चाहिए। और धरना आंदोलन की बात किया है वो आपने कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल मेथड्स के लिए, उनके टर्मिनोलॉजी में धरना आंदोलन भी वेर नॉट अ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल मेथड। तो कौन सी मेथड यूज करना चाहिए था मुझे मालूम नहीं है, मुझे नहीं समझता है कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल मेथड क्या होता है। वो शायद अपील होती है, हाँ, एप्लीकेशन बनाना, अपील करना, या तो मैं एमएलए के पास जाके करना वगैरह वगैरह शायद होता होगा। खैर, धरना आंदोलन वगैरह इवन दलितों का भी, दलितों के ग्रामर से भी जाता रहा है, वो भी नहीं करते हैं दलित वो धरना आंदोलन वगैरह। रादर आदिवासियों में धरना आंदोलन वगैरह ज़्यादा होते रहे हैं कंपेयर टू दलित्स, आई वुड से। एंड ये बात सच है आपकी कि इसके होते हुए भी वो अपना जंगल पानी जंगल जमीन जंगल है वो बचा नहीं पाए हैं और वो जाता रहा है। लेकिन उन्होंने काफ़ी कुछ बचाया भी है, ये भी हमें भूलना नहीं चाहिए। उन्होंने अपना प्रतिरोध किया है उसके बारे में। अदरवाइज सारा गढ़चिरौली, सारा बस्तर, सारा नियमगिरी एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा वुड हैव बीन vacated, of these people. So they have, the very fact that that has not happened so far is to be credited to the resistance. So they have resisted is a fact. Now they have not succeeded in saving those things. That is also a fact altogether, because they are powerless. When it ultimately comes to that, the the there is an asymmetry of power. अदर साइड कैपिटलिस्ट है, उसको बैकिंग स्टेट का पूरा मशीनरी का बैकिंग होता है, और ये लोग सिर्फ अपना ज़्यादा क्या कर सकते हैं, इनके पास क्या है? तो अपने हाथ है और अपनी संख्या है, इसको ये वो कोई चैलेंज नहीं कर पाते हैं। तो जो भी है, जो भी उन्होंने अभी तक अपने समझ से जो जो स्ट्रैटेजीज अपने प्रतिरोध के लिए यूज किए हैं, उनको एक्चुअली सलाम करना चाहिए कि वो आज तक अपने आप को बचा पाए हैं। तो वी शुड नॉट अंडरमाइन दोज काइंड्स ऑफ थिंग। एंड आप दलितों के बारे में बोले तो मैंने तो पहले कॉन्ट्राडिक्ट किया कि दलितों में वो ग्रामर नहीं रहा है, क्योंकि बहुत सारे जो जो Dalits are basically being dominated by the section which are supposed to be middle class, educated Dalits, etc. एंड उनका जो एक तरह से हेजेमनी हो गया है दलितों के ऊपर, उससे वो दलितों को मिस डायरेक्शन हो गया है पूरा। तो वो लोग भूल गए हैं कि ज़मीन पे लड़ाई करने की जो ग्रामर था उनका, जिससे कि उन्होंने उस पूरे कॉलोनियल टाइम्स में जो कुछ हासिल किया वो भूल गए हैं, और सिर्फ अभी अपना ऐसे ही चिल्ला बिल्ला के या ये करने से ये करते रहे हैं। So as I said, in the context of Gadchiroli, there is no easy solutions to that. You have to understand and think through this entire framework proudly, whatever today the discussion has been. This is also very important, that how this entire framework is devised, how this is, the whole system is waved through. Uh, this needs to be firstly understood to actually articulate our resistance. जब तक लोगों को जागरूक करके और रेजिस्टेंस करके अपने सही सोच के बेसिस पर हम नहीं करते हैं, तब तक वो इफेक्टिव होगी नहीं। अदरवाइज लोग तो करते रहे हैं, जो भी उनका जो भी ट्रंकेटेड अंडरस्टैंडिंग है या जो भी उनके समझ है, उसके बेसिस पे भी उन्होंने जो रेजिस्टेंस किया है वो कोई फालतू नहीं रहा है। वो उन्होंने अभी तक वो काम में आया है, और वो कोई स्ट्रगल बिना मैंने फालतू नहीं हो जाता है। फालतू होती है कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल बातें, स्ट्रगल फालतू नहीं बनते हैं।
Professor, how many more questions can we take?
आई एम हियर।
Oh, okay. Like, I was just asking if it's okay with you. Um, but before that, like, I just wanted to make an announcement. जितने भी साथी यहाँ पे दिल्ली में हैं, हमने मतलब हमने अभी गडचिरोली की बात की और बहुत सारी चीज़ों की बात की जिससे डिस्प्लेसमेंट ही रिलेटेड है। तो दिल्ली में प्रेस क्लब में एक प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस है और एक पब्लिक मीटिंग है एक एंटी डिस्प्लेसमेंट मूवमेंट को लेके। तो ये एक फोरम है, इट्स कॉल्ड फोरम अगेंस्ट कॉर्पोरेटाइजेशन एंड मिलिटराइजेशन करवा रहा है। इट्स एट 3 PM कल। तो जितने भी साथी दिल्ली में हैं वो प्लीज़ ज्वाइन कर लीजिए। एंड हम इसके साथ नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन पे बढ़ते हैं। अरविंद, आप अपना क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं।
So am I audible,
या यश, वेरी मच।
sir? Okay. So thank you, Professor, for very insightful and informative lecture. So I want to start with some comments जो कि अभी जो प्रश्न आ रहे थे आदिवासी मुद्दों के बारे में। सो जो अपने जो मोडस ऑपरेंडाई के बारे में बात की कि क्या है मोडस ऑपरेंडाई आदिवासी जो मुद्दे हैं, समस्याएं हैं, चाहे वो विस्थापन है, जो जिसमें हम नेक्सस देखते हैं ग्लोबल जो फोर्सेस हैं, कैपिटलिस्ट फोर्सेस है उसका स्टेट के साथ। तो जो मेरे साथी हैं मैं उनको बताना चाहूंगा कि बाबा साहेब ने जो बात कही थी, सर करेक्ट मी इफ आई एम रॉन्ग। सो बाबा साहेब ने जिस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में बात की थी, वो गांधी को कॉन्टेक्स्ट में रख के बात करते हैं कि एक लोकतांत्रिक हम लोग देश, एक राष्ट्र बनाने जा रहे हैं, एक लोकतांत्रिक भारत बनने जा रहे हैं। उसमें इन गैर लोकतांत्रिक जो तरीके हैं, मीन्स, उनका इस्तेमाल नहीं होना चाहिए। लेकिन विद द सेम टाइम हम देखते हैं कि हमारे जो फंडामेंटल राइट्स हैं, 21A का जो हमारा पूरा अधिकार है, उसमें शांतिपूर्ण अपनी बातों को रखने का और धरना प्रदर्शन का अधिकार है। और मुझे लगता है यही जो मूल अधिकार है, फंडामेंटल राइट्स है, वो उसको बेस बना के उसका एज अ मोडस ऑपरेंडाई या तो अपना मीन्स एज अ टूल इस्तेमाल करके आदिवासियों ने कई आंदोलन सक्सेसफुली जीते भी हैं। तो देयर आर टू एग्जांपल्स टू सक्सेसफुल मॉडल्स। फर्स्ट इज नियामगिरी मूवमेंट को अगर आप याद करेंगे, जहां उड़ीसा डिस्ट्रिक्ट में वो है, कोंध ट्राइब है वहां पे, जब वेदांता ने वहां पे माइनिंग करने के लिए लिया, नियम के लिए उसको जब लेने की कोशिश की, हड़पने की कोशिश की, तो उन्होंने एक लंबा मूवमेंट चलाया वहां के ट्राइब्स ने। और उसके बाद जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट में गए तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने आदेश दिया कि ये रेफरेंडम से आएगा, वो वहाँ की जो जनता है वो फैसला करेगी उसका क्या होना चाहिए। और उसके बाद जब वहाँ पे जो ग्राम सभा थी या तो उनका जो मूवमेंट जो चल रहा था, वो कमेटी बैठी और उसने जितने भी गांव के अंदर आते थे उसने एक साथ फैसला किया कि हम लोग इस फैसले के विरोध में है, तो वो फिर वो बंद हो गया। दिस इज वन मॉडल। अगर आप दूसरी बात करेंगे तो छत्तीसगढ़ में जो भारत जन आंदोलन का मॉडल था, जिसमें 2006 का जो वन अधिकार अधिनियम आया था, अगर उस मॉडल को भी देखेंगे तो बहुत सफल प्रतीत होता है। क्योंकि एक लंबे आंदोलन के बाद जो जंगल में रह रहे थे आदिवासी या तो वन भूमि के आसपास जो रह रहे थे, उनको उनका अधिकार मिला था। तो ये जो रास्ता है, मुझे ये जो मॉडल है, मुझे काफी कुछ सफल प्रतीत होता है। So it is my comment, and now I will come to my question. So my first question is कि अगर आप इंडियन पॉलिटिकल सिस्टम को देखते हैं, सो इंडियन पॉलिटिकल सिस्टम में कास्ट की जो पॉलिटिक्स है उसको बहुत नेगेटिवली देखा जाता है। पहले जितने भी स्कॉलर्स रहे हैं उन्होंने बहुत नेगेटिव तरीके से देखा है। लेकिन योगेंद्र यादव का जो पूरा स्टडी है, इन द सेकेंड अफसर्स की जो उनकी पूरा अवधारणा है, उसके बाद रजनी कोठारी का जो पूरा आइडिया है पोलिटिसाइजेशन ऑफ कास्ट, अगर इन दोनों को देखें तो एक बड़ा एक पॉजिटिव व्यू नजर आता है कि सेकेंड अफसर्स के बाद जो डेमोक्रेसी है अपने रियल फॉर्म पे डिसेमिनेट हुई है, जो दलित हैं, आदिवासी हैं, उन तक पहुंची। आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि आदिवासी तक पहुंची है, बट दलित तक तो जो पिछड़ी
साथी, आप
जातियां हैं
अपना
वहां तक
क्वेश्चन थोड़ा जल्दी पूछ सकते हैं, लाइक वी आर लैकिंग ऑन टाइम।
जी,
तो
श्योर श्योर
या
श्योर श्योर श्योर।
क्वेश्चन पे आ
सो
जाइए।
सो ओके ओके। सो सो लेकिन हम लोग लिबरलाइजेशन के बाद देख रहे हैं कि दलित जो पॉलिटिक्स है वो लगातार डिक्लाइन में जा रहा है। और अभी हम देखें तो जिस तरीके से राइटिंग फोर्सेस का उभार हुआ है, तो वो लगातार पतन हो रहा है। तो इसके कारण क्या है? एक तो पहला क्वेश्चन है। दूसरा क्वेश्चन ये कि आपने कहा था कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन जो असेंबली था उसने जो कास्ट को सॉलिडिफाई करने से रिस्टेब्लिश करने की कोशिश की थी, मैं इसको समझ नहीं पाया था, तो काइंडली इंटरप्रेट those that question also. Thank you, sir.
Okay. लास्ट वन फर्स्ट। जो मैं कह रहा था कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में, जब बन रही थी कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन तब वो एनिलेशन ऑफ कास्ट को एबॉलिश कर दिया एंड देन कास्ट को रखा गया। क्योंकि एनिलेशन कास्ट को अगर ईमानदारी से अगर एबॉलिश करना था तो कास्ट को जाते हुए कास्ट को भी एबॉलिश करना चाहिए था ना। बिकॉज अभी भी आप देखते हैं कि कोई भी जब तक वो कास्ट की जो काफ़ी कुछ सर्वे किए गए राइट फ्रॉम द बिगिनिंग 1950s टू as recent as 2011, तब सर्वेज में पाया गया कि अनटचेबिलिटी में कुछ ज़्यादा डेंट नहीं हुआ है, क्योंकि कास्ट सर्वाइव किए हैं, कास्ट को प्रिजर्व किया गया। और कास्ट को किस तरह प्रिजर्व किया गया? बिकॉज फॉर इंस्टेंस द रिजर्वेशंस। So reservations actually they wanted to forge into a weapon. Basically, that way they wanted to preserve the caste, because caste were the no ruling caste class uh, anywhere in the world will let go of any divisive fault lines in the society, because that is useful to them for dividing people. So that becomes a weapon in their hands, and caste-like thing they will never let go of. So they wanted to preserve, and what way they preserve is the reservation. Reservation became the means of preserving the caste. And how they actually proliferated this and strengthened the caste? Because of proliferation of reservation. It's a corollary. So this needs to be understood first. Okay. So this is the way I explained how the constitutional intrigues. तो सब कुछ बहुत ठीक ठाक दिखता है, बाबा साहब एक्सप्लेन करते हैं, ये करते हैं वगैरह वगैरह, तो ये भी बात भूल जाते हैं बात कि 2 साल कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑपरेशन में आने के बाद 2 साल के भीतर ही बाबा साहब ने बोल दिया कि ये कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन किसी के काम का नहीं। मुझे एक हैक होना पड़ा, उन्होंने डिसाइड किया, वो मुझे लिखना पड़ा लीगल लैंग्वेज में, और आई वुड बी द फर्स्ट पर्सन टू बर्न इट डाउन। So these were the Baba Saheb's words in Rajya Sabha. People conveniently forget, and the entire constitution is attributed to him. It is not so. So this is what it is. मैं आपसे बहुत सहमत हूँ, और मैंने भी शायद ब्रीफ में यही बोला था कि जो भी रेजिस्टेंस है उसको they need to be respected, because the people have articulated their resistance from their own understanding. It is not that they should borrow my understanding or somebody else's to do that. So, and they have been successful. I see them successful. If they are not visibly successful, there is a learning from that, and that needs to be assimilated and improved upon when they actually build up resistance in future. So that way it would go on. The story doesn't end with one movement or one struggle. So that goes on, and I'm quite aware of your example myself. So that communicates. Other thing that you touched upon is something like a democratization of meaning democratization to caste politics, as Yogendra or Rajni Kothari, etc. says. I do not so much subscribe to that, because that is a problematic. ऊपरी तौर पे सब कुछ democratization लगता है, because there is a sort of evolution that goes on over the years, but it has not really democratization वगैरह क्या, किस बात की बात करते हैं आप? एक मुट्ठी भर लोग आगे आकर एक मिडिल क्लास कॉन्स्टिट्यूट करते हैं, उसको डेमोक्रेटाइजेशन नहीं बोला जा सकता है। अगर आप डेमोक्रेटाइजेशन का परिमाण अगर एट्रोसिटीज माने जाएंगे, ओके, तो एट्रोसिटीज एक्चुअली बॉम्बे सेंसेक्स की तरह बढ़ती ही गई है, और जो जो निचला तबका है दलित, उनका कोई अस्तित्व रहा नहीं है। ये एक्चुअली वस्तुस्थिति है। तो मैं आई एम सॉरी दैट आई डू नॉट सब्सक्राइब टू दिस काइंड ऑफ टॉक। एक्चुअली कास्ट हैव टू बी annihilated. There is nothing caste to be used for any emancipatory purpose. So howsoever they might be looking good and this and that, that doesn't mean anything. So we should be very clear about these kinds of things and not create hodgepodge things and get confused with. न्यू लिबरलिज्म की भी बात की आपने। न्यू लिबरलिज्म वगैरह में क्या क्या हुआ इज ओनली क्रिएटेड, वो एक बड़ी लंबी बात हो जाएगी, तो मैं शॉर्ट में बताता हूँ कि न्यू लिबरलिज्म के प्रोडक्ट है कि बीजेपी का आना, दलितों का अपने आंदोलन से भटकना, अब बाबा साहब को एज ए न्यू लिबरलिस्ट प्रोजेक्ट करना, और जो जो निचला तबका है उसको न्यू लिबरलिज्म एज इट इज पानाशिया काइंड ऑफ पेश करना। ये सब बातें होती रही है और ज़्यादातर एक कंफ्यूजन क्रिएट करना। न्यू लिबरलिज्म हैज बीन the strategy. As I probably have written so much that probably not a single person might have really written. And those days 90s में जब ये चल रहा था दौर, तब हमारा एक धंधा बन गया था ये न्यू लिबरलिज्म का रेजिस्ट करने के लिए। तो मैं जानता हूँ, तो न्यू लिबरलिज्म ने जितना डैमेज कर दिया है वो काफ़ी डैमेज हुआ है, इवन भी आंदोलन के तौर पे। Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
Yeah,
Hello, sir. Can I ask my question?
yeah, sure.
Yeah. Greetings, sir. I'm from Kolkata. Right now, I'm based among the. I'm working and living with the labor communities in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, in the migrant labor communities. And being from a Hindu family, I am constantly bombarded by the people of different nationalities and different faiths about the caste system of Hindus, of our caste system. So, like they have, like they learned about our different caste differentiation practices, very vague idea. They keep asking me that, and for like I try to answer them as much as possible in a manner. Sir, can you hear? Hello,
Hello, yeah. Go on.
sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are, at least to me.
Okay, yeah. So, sir, here from the other neighbor communities from the subcontinent, like from Bangladesh, Pakistan, or Sri Lanka. Uh, they sometimes most of the time they criticize us. They criticize the Hindus for these practices, and they would say this is why people keep converting into other religions, and they keep citing examples from their villages or from their local areas. Uh, and in this case, in this scenario, sir, I want to, like, we know that extensive work has been done in these topics, like your work, of course. In this scenario, sir, I want to know about the caste systems prevalent, the caste practices prevalent in the other marginalized, in the other minority religious faiths in India. Like for example, we have read very small snippets about the Pasmandas, the Ahmadiyas, and maybe like that. But we do not know much about them in detail. Like at least I, as a novice, we do not know. Can you please shed some light on these topics, like the caste differences prevalent in other religious faiths?
Okay, I understood. The the short answer to that is something like in India, एक notion हो गया था. You understand Hindi? Do you understand?
Yes, sir, I understand, but I can't properly
No,
speak in
it's all right.
Hindi. I'm
It's all
sorry.
right. You spoke in English, but maybe that I have been speaking something like mixed tongue. So what happens is that there was a notion that caste is only confined to Hinduism. There is no doubt about it that caste originated through Hinduism, meaning it is confined, it was actually associated with Hinduism. But in other religions, whichever religion has come in India, also got infected with caste. So there is no religion like Islam or Christianity or anything for that matter, Sikhism. Everybody actually has a caste. Okay, so uh, so the religious transition does not really emancipate you. So Baba Sahib thought of renouncing Hinduism, you know that, and then he ultimately embraced Buddhism. You know, so even Buddhism also might be having castes. Who knows? In the Sri Lanka and all that kind of thing, they might also be doing that. But in India, for instance, we need not stray to that extent. It is not relevant. But Islam, now among Muslims, there's a movement, the palpable movement of backward Muslims against the forward caste Muslims has been there. And what is there? Ali Anwar, the Pasmanda movement, etc. in Bihar. He's from Bihar, so it actually comes from Bihar and UP and all those kinds of things. That is very palpable thing. In Christianity, the castes are there, you know, and there has been a movement. The majority of people, actually, as a matter of fact, why Muslims are hated or Christians are hated by Hindutva people is basically because of caste. Because much of their majority of people actually the converts from the lower caste, and that memory hasn't faded in the Brahmins. You know, who is that? Shama Prasad Mukherjee, Bengali. He had written that, you know, when Bengal was partitioned, and that time he wrote that the Chandals, etc., of East Bengal, shall we be actually living under them? That kind, that kind of thing remains in the consciousness. So the known religion in India is rid of caste. The religion meaning their religious ideology as a theory might be sans caste and very egalitarian, but their societies that formed with their religious identity have not been rid of caste. So that has been the that that has been the truth.
Yes, sir. Here in this case, I also wanted to bring one point here, like that different. Since you mentioned Buddhism, the people of the Nepali labor community here, they or the people from the Jharkhand region, the workers from the Jharkhand whom I am living with here, many of them not even conform to the Hindu religion. Like they say, we are not just a different caste, we are of an entirely different religion, but it is not being acknowledged. There are many Buddhists also who are from Nepal, from those areas, who are in constant conflict because of this with the
Yeah, yeah,
Brahmins.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry?
Nepal is
Yeah.
culturally India only, so there is nothing to distinguish. Even there are a lot of Nepalis,
Yes.
you know, who follow Buddhism. You know, they call themselves Sakyas, and they claim something like a lineage of Buddha, but they are treated something like a low caste. You know, so that I have seen. So it's all a subcontinental problem. Uh, Pakistan, anyway, now very few people have been left out there, and there also is a similar kind of thing. But there are same situation is there. Even the caste among the Muslims, etc., is followed in Pakistan too. There are Pasmanda strata, which actually is oppressed. They are not treated as Muslims by the upper caste Muslims. So everywhere it is the same. I do not know so much about Bangladesh, but Bangladesh is the extension of West Bengal. So
I would say it is just a reflection of West Bengal, but in a different color.
yeah, yeah,
Like from my experiences with the community.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks. You are speaking from Saudi.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Like I am from Kolkata, but I am based with the labor.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Anyone?
Professor, how many more questions? Just
No, I. From me, there is nothing. We'll have to stop somewhere. How many are left out now?
yeah. I think we can take two more. Does that
We,
work?
we can take couple of them. No problem.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. So, Habibi, can you ask the next question?
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Right.
Uh, uh, Nice meeting you, sir, after a long time.
Yeah.
Uh, I've heard your sessions a few years back. I'm really glad to see you in a session here. So welcome back. Just want to ask you things. Uh, Recently in Tamil Nadu, I'm from Tamil Nadu, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
Being here. So recently we had a like a terrible incident here in a place called Tirunelveli near Nanganeri. Uh, a Dalit boy. He belongs to a caste named Aparaya. He was completely, he was like inculcated. He was completely being stabbed and literally wounded. I think it was on the news, Nanganeri incident. It was known. So it was from upper caste. So during that incident, while trying to resolve the issue, we had like encountered a different scenario where we see a communal organization, like in terms of religion, it's there, but more in terms of politically, we are able to see people being gathered against this minority. This like not only like a minority, like a sense of people coming from this community. So it's a kind of a nexus, and I'm not able to realize what's going on. To be honest, this religion, and apart from religion, this caste is also playing a role in communally gathering people. So how do we see it, sir? Because here, like a sense of a new type of nationalism is trying to breach here in the local on a grassroots level. So we are able to see to be open. The right wing politics here from BJP, we are able to see that trying to step in. So this more communally, it's getting organized, and caste is being used as a very effective tool to gather itself. So how do we see it, sir? Like apart from the cultural realm, it's getting more political, and it's more strong. That's what.
Mm-hmm. No, actually, these right wingers are using every kind of thing. So, depending upon the local, they might be using. I'm not so much aware about the incident, so I could be going into specific. But at the broad terms, in broad terms, uh, as I hinted, like BJP's thing, they would show that they have not been casteist or they have not been doing the caste politics, but basically their building of constituency is based on caste, the middle caste as a consolidation. So even among Dalit, they have made an inroads and they can the when the communal question comes. So that time the mobilization happens. Mobilization actually requires the foot soldiers, and the foot soldiers are gathered from basically lower caste, Dalits, and the so-called Shudra caste, the lower part of Shudra caste, etc., go into this thing. So this is the mobilization. So that would be always something like looking like caste uh, uh, based mobilization, but for the communal purpose. So it might be happening like that. At many places, this is the mode in which it like
Okay.
like in Gujarat 2002 violence when Modi was the chief minister. That time also, one thing came to the surface that Adivasis were mobilized. These people, RSS has been uh, working among Adivasis for a long time, and surrounding areas, Adivasis were mobilized to against Muslims to butcher them in Ahmedabad. So was the case of Dalit. Dalit participation also became a very, very prominent in those violence.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just one more, like especially on the debate of caste, been highly influenced by your work on the dichotomization of caste and class. In that, there is something I always wanted to ask you for quite a long time. The thing is, this discussion about caste as a cultural, political, and economic phenomenon, like in recent times, everyone who has been trying to oppose this hyper nationalism of BJP and the Sanatana Dharma have been targeting it on the cultural forum, and it's wonderful, and that's been really useful as well. But recent times, you are able to see also the political and economic mobilizations happening as well. So, is this the right time to create a discussion among Dalits ourselves on the other factors which are highly influencing caste, apart from religion and culture? Is it the right time to also speak on the aspects of political and economic issues as well, sir?
Political economic issues should predominate rather. Other things will follow.
But just quite worried because whenever this discussion happens, I'm just worried. I try to am I getting alienated because of speaking caste in terms of political or economic factors? So that's why I wanted to ask you, sir.
No, even I can invoke the authority of Ambedkar, and he also said the same thing. Like, but he said many things, and those things get diffused. But one of the things he said that a political, if